If you're wondering, how does this GEO thing, this generative engine optimization, how does it work? Let's talk about it. Obviously, AI is changing the way that people interact with the internet, and it will change the way that people buy. So, this is for marketers or business owners who are trying to understand how does the idea of someone going to ChatGPT and asking them a question instead of Google, where we have optimized the hell out of our website for years using SEO principles. How does that change in this world where people might be going to ChatGPT to ask those same kind of questions? This presentation will help you understand how we at G&W are thinking about this. So the presentation is called Future-Proofing Your Content Strategy for AI because that's fundamentally what it is. And it focuses primarily on how we need to be rethinking the way that we think about content because of GEO, again, Generative Engine Optimization. So let's get into it. Here's the agenda. It's boring. You can pause this if you'd like to read it. The big ask that we are being asked by clients is how do we drive traffic in an AI-powered age? Most companies have seen their website traffic absolutely tank this year, in the year of our Lord 2025. And so the question is, how do we get it back? Or how do we pivot in a more fundamental way? So the big question is actually not how do we get our website traffic back? It is how are people going to buy in an AI-powered age? Buyer behavior is not changing. It has already changed. This screenshot was taken from somebody who has a number one term in terms of search engine result page, a SERP. So this is a number one term that they have landed in Google, which was always the holy grail of SEO. And you can see that the purple line here is impressions and the blue line here is total clicks. And you can see that although impressions have remained pretty consistent over the course of a year, the click traffic has plummeted. This is the guy whose unfortunate chart this is. It came from LinkedIn. His name is Rashamim. And you can see that I've snapped here what his perspective on this is. His perspective is that Google's AI overview has come for his traffic essentially and is siphoning that traffic away. So we have a decision to make as marketers on how we want to think about this and what we want to do about this. And that's where we're going to start in this deck. So first, it's important to know what is an AI overview and to make sure that we are all getting our search terms correct. So this is an example of what is G&W Consulting. You can see that when you put that into Google, the AI overview is explaining to you without you ever having to click into our site what it is that we do, what we specialize in. It's giving you the recap so that you don't have to come onto our actual website. So it's getting this information from sources the same way that Google always has, except now on the right-hand side here, you're seeing a citation. And then below the fold, below this line that is literally on Google, you're seeing what you used to see in organic SERP results. We are also number one there. So there was a time in 2025 where Google was slowly rolling out AI overviews so that not everything that you Googled had an AI overview. We are a very small company and Google has come for us in terms of the overview. So there isn't much these days that Google isn't answering in an AI overview. However, it's important to know the difference that that has caused in people's traffic to their website. And before we get into that, this might be controversial, but Google is still very important. There are lots of thought leaders out there and lots of alarmists saying people don't Google anything anymore. Oh, your grandmother even goes to ChatGPT to find a recipe instead of Googling it. This chart that you're seeing on the right-hand side of your screen shows just what a monstrosity Google is. Google still refers an incredible amount of traffic to the rest of the internet. In 2019, 66% of web traffic referrals came from Google. Now it is just under 64%. So has it been hit by probably AI and lots of other macro factors? It has, but it still has close to a monopoly, let's just be honest, on the way that people search the internet. The second largest search engine is YouTube, and you can see that they don't refer even as much traffic as Microsoft and Bing. So this should be an eye-opening chart for anybody who's talking to their executives or anyone within the organization about how Google is impacting our search traffic. Okay, the other thing to note here is that Googling is still popular, right? It increased 4.7% from 24 to 25. That's the biggest increase in many, many years. So people do still Google. And in fact, especially with localized terms, if you're a local business, you still are likely being Googled for like restaurants near me. Now, it is also important to note that some reductions in traffic are going to be status quo. We're going to talk about what that status quo looks like on the next slide. But there's also the potential that you and your business are experiencing what I would call a business insider sized cliff. So Business Insider from April of 22 to April of 25 saw a 55% decline in organic traffic. That is alarming. And the result of that decline in traffic was people lost their jobs. So there is a risk here that you might have a really big problem versus the kind of status quo problem that all marketers, all business owners are dealing with. Okay, the last thing I'll mention here is that AI everything is still very much in an experimental mode. So lots of this is subject to change. I am recording this video in December of 2025. By February of 2026, there's probably going to be a whole new slew of details and information to share and update. So the question then becomes, if AI overviews are siphoning off all of this traffic and people are still going to Google, regardless of this whole hype that people are going to go to an LLM, should we even optimize for AI overviews then? And I think that the answer to that will come through looking at more of the details. So what tends to happen when an AI overview exists is that any traffic that you saw pre-AI overview will decrease by about a third. If 3 people in 2024 Googled a term that you were number one SERP for, all 3 of them would have at the time clicked through to your site. Now only 2 of them are going to be clicking through to your site. So it's a big deal. You're losing 1/3 of that traffic. Early data also, however, showed that if you could gain the citation and the number one SERP, you got a little bit of a bump. It wasn't so bad. Instead of 34 to 35, it was 33 to 34. So it still sucks, but you do get a little bit of a bump. And then I think the common sense to me as a marketer of 20 years says that if you can get the brand awareness on the citation and the number one SERP, this is good for your business. Even if you don't get the click, you get the brand recognition. And that's how people really buy anyways. It seeps into their mind and you become part of the consideration set. I will also say that I am primarily a B2B marketer. So when I talk and think about this, I am primarily thinking in B2B contexts. If you're in B2C, I think most of this is still valuable for you, but it might not be exactly perfect to your use case. So I think ultimately, yes, the answer is we should optimize for AI overviews. So what do we do about it? The first thing that we encourage everyone to be doing is taking the benchmarks really, really seriously. The majority of people have GA4, but it's sort of one of those measurement platforms that people implement and then they kind of let it run, or maybe they think their SEO agency is doing something with it. The number of companies whose GA4 is not up to snuff is the majority of them, unfortunately. And so the first thing that you can do is take your benchmarks really seriously. Make sure that you're getting into Google Analytics and really refining what are your goals, right? How are they set up? Not what are your goals philosophically, but what are your goals literally as they are set up in GA4? Are they working as you expect them to be? Are they not double counting things to where you have maybe a thank you page that is recording the same traffic that a form fills recording, and therefore you're double counting it? Make sure that you shore up your GA4 because it is going to be your primary mode of reporting on this, unless you have some other tool that you're using to report on website traffic, but the vast majority of companies are using GA4. Okay. So then you need a year-over-year, a quarter-over-quarter per page monthly report where you are tracking what is happening to my traffic. And again, if you are a little bit behind on this, if you go look at this data year-over-year, I would be shocked, and quarter-over-quarter, I would be shocked if you do not experience a decrease by about a third. That is what we see super consistently across all of our clients' websites. And then wherever it's greater than 1/3 of traffic that you're seeing decreased, you know you are on the verge potentially of having a business insider size cliff, which again, the reason you care about that is because it will cause a business insider sized issue in your company. People could lose their jobs. So this is really, really critical to make sure you understand your metrics and your numbers. So you can identify where you have your biggest problems versus just small problems that you can worry about later. This is all about prioritization. Okay, so then what do we do? So G&W has this framework that we use called protect, pivot, and promote. And what you're going to do is classify every single one of your pages into one of these, or if you really don't have time to think about it, we do have a monitor phase that we've also been using. So let's talk a little bit about what we're going to do. So protect pages are the ones that drive pipeline or conversions. Again, this is part of the reason that if you don't have your conversion metrics on lock in GA4, this is much harder to identify, and you're going to have to use sort of common sense, your gut, what sales thinks, something in order to identify what are the pages that you cannot lose any more traffic to. And then you're going to monitor them like a hawk. Then we're going to classify our pivot pages. So pivot pages are pages that used to be really great, but they're experiencing, again, an outsized decrease due to either AI overviews or some other factor. We're sort of blaming AI overviews here as a general rule of thumb, but there's lots of reasons that your traffic could decline. So even outside of the AI overview component, this is a good exercise that you should be doing regardless. So you're going to classify things as pivot, then you are going to reformat that content into contributor style content, more likely to become cited by LLMs. So you're basically going to re-swizzle the way that that whole page is structured. We're going to put a pin in that because there's more on that later. Then there's the idea of promote. So if we really think that the page is well structured, we think it's doing everything that we want it to, it has all of the data that we want, we've updated it, it's really, really good, but it's just not getting the traffic that we think it deserves, then we're going to amplify it via some link strategies and some other stuff that we're going to talk about. Okay, so I will reiterate that prioritization is key. Again, it's very unlikely that you do not have a problem here, but how do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time. So we have to start somewhere. And so we should prioritize intent-rich terms. Again, ideal if we can figure this out through GA4, but we all kind of know what those are anyways, right? We need to prioritize your homepage. We need to prioritize your product pages. We need to prioritize case studies. These are not rocket science. Anyone should be knowing that we need to do that. Anything that drives branded keyword traffic back to our site, that's all good. High traffic volume, also good, right? Prioritization is key. And then we need to also prepare for GEO, and this is where the pivot pages advice comes in. So one, we use the SCQA model. It's not ours. I think it's McKinsey's maybe. And so the thing that we all know about AI is, and LLMs in general, is that they have a bias for the very beginning and the very end of anything. If you've given ChatGPT a document, you've seen this in real time. It will focus on the first page, and especially the first paragraph and the last paragraph, and everything in between. You have to really try hard to get it to focus on it. So we are using that and manipulating that bias in the way that we're structuring content. So we want to talk in the first 200 to 300 words about the situation, the complication, the question, and the answer. What is our unique position on this thing, on this topic, on this category, whatever it is? And you want a lot of links in there. So first party research is gold in this scenario. If you can have a percentage of people experience this, and this is the impact of that, and here's our unique take, amazing. Also, just like in classic SEO, domain authority for the companies that you're linking back to, the websites that you're linking into, is still very important. So linking back to things like analyst reports from Forrester, that's going to be great in that first 200 to 300 words. So you really want to try to structure the way that you're introducing whatever page we're talking about here in a way that gives it high authority, answers a question in the way that people are going to be asking an LLM, and sets you up as a unique perspective on that. That's really what the LLM is looking for. So you're going to use structured data throughout. That's facts and questions, how-tos. Also, H2s are still super important, just like they always have been for SEO. You really want those to be question-driven subheaders. The other thing here is that the explicit structure matters, right? Like when I say H2, I mean in the code. That is still how LLMs, just like Google has always historically done, is reading that page and understanding the context. So it's really, really critical that you think about this contextually, but also technically. Again, this is very similar to the way SEO has always operated. Here's just an example. I write for Fast Company, and so this is an example of how I am doing this in real time. We also at G&W have an AI readiness content resource. I don't even know where it is on the website. Listen, if you comment, and then I'll have to scrounge it up for you. So if you want to comment something, and I'll let you know. Okay, so here's the other thing that I will say. At G&W, we do have some enterprise clients, but the vast majority of our clients are SMB, heavy on the M. So SMB is small and medium businesses, heavy on the medium businesses. 100 employees to about 500 is kind of a sweet spot for us. And so companies that are that size do not have endless budgets and they don't have endless time. And so we really pride ourselves on our very practical approach to looking at problems like GEO and saying, where can we invest or where can we guide you to invest where you can get the most redundancy? Where can we kill the most birds with one stone? Because you don't have the budget to do everything. And so I think the key to that is multi-channel discoverability. So there's a lot of debate about GPT in particular and its sort of up and down usage of Reddit as a source of truth. So here's my personal belief on this. Sam Altman, the CEO of ChatGPT, OpenAI, he is the third largest shareholder of Reddit. Now, Sam has, in fairness, said very publicly, very aggressively, that he in no way dictates how his team, who owns this idea of like, how does ChatGPT gather sources and how do they accredit them? He said he is not influencing that at all. You can choose to believe or not. I personally think that there is way too much money to be had by not using that source. And I also think just fundamentally, Reddit is a good source of information. The biggest problem, as we all know, if you are on Reddit, is that there is just as much, actually more junk than there is good stuff on there. And so being able to filter it out is going to be the biggest challenge, but one that I personally think ChatGPT will figure out. LinkedIn is another area where I think, again, as a B2B person, there is just no excuse to not be all up on that platform all of the time. And Quora, I do not touch, but I think it's worth noting that it is a source that is often referenced. So if you are a SaaS company in particular, Gartner, Forrester, they are referenced a metric shit ton. And so you really, if you don't have someone today that owns analyst relations, and I'm not talking about like one marketer who owns demand and analyst relations and PR and all the things, like you need a dedicated person for these analyst relations. I think at this point, it's way too important to not do it. Peer review sites are another interesting area. So G2, again, in the SaaS world is kind of the gold standard of where people go to review things. I think our strategy here has to change very dramatically and pretty quickly. So historically, it has been kind of good enough for a team to go out to their customer base and say, hey, go review us on G2 and give us a 5-star review. And the reason that that's good enough is because if you have thousands and thousands and thousands of reviews over years and years and years, no human being is going to go consume all of those reviews. It's not going to happen. What they're going to do is just go look at the stars. Oh, look at this feature that I really care about. This vendor has a 4.5. This one has a 4.2. 4.5 must be better, right? But all of that changes when an LLM goes to a G2 and consumes the data, and a user goes to an LLM and says, tell me which solution between this one and this one is better based on G2 reviews. Because what an LLM is going to do is go look at all of that content and all of the context and compare it to what its user is asking for. So I think the future of peer review sites is you really need to spin up referral campaigns that target differentiated messaging. I'll give you an example. So if I was a marketer who competed against, say, Salesforce in the CRM category, what I would do is take all of my customers who had moved from Salesforce onto my platform, and I would build a campaign where I market to them and I say, would you be willing to do a review for us? I know you moved off of Salesforce about a year ago. Here's what some of our other customers who move off of that platform say about us. They say our time to value was dramatically better. Some say up to 80% better. I don't know. They say that it's great that they don't have to have a full-time admin at a salary of over $100,000 just to run the system effectively. They say that our customer support is white glove and hands-on out of the box as opposed to paying a premium for it. Bottom line, whatever your competitive advantage points are, I would coach my customer to use some of those in their review, because by giving it to them, they can tweak it and adjust it and make it their own, but fundamentally still essentially stay on message. Imagine you move to this place where you have 10 of your customers over the course of a month going into G2 and saying how much better you are than Salesforce with all of these very similar messages. Before you know it, an LLM will be taking that context and saying, well, it looks like for customers like you that are looking to switch from Salesforce, this solution is actually a really great one. Or it might say, this solution compared to Salesforce, here's what a lot of people are saying on G2, why they've moved from Salesforce to this place. I mean, this one actually looks really good. So it's much more compelling. The third thing, and this is the no-brainer portion where you roll your eyes and say like, okay, thanks, genius. But the reality is that all of this stuff that I've been talking about is just you trying to connect to your audience that is somewhere else. ChatGPT has your audience. Google has your audience. You want to get in front of them, and therefore you are having to finagle and position yourself in order to do so with these other companies. However, if you just own your audience, then you always have direct access to them and you don't have to try to fumble fuck your way into getting access through these other companies. So one, I do believe in the newsletter. I love a good newsletter. GPT makes creating a newsletter super simple. Maybe I'll do another video on that at some point. We're doing that for a lot of our clients. And so Community Hub is one of those things that you can do at varying degrees of complexity. But I think Reddit is a real opportunity to kill a lot of birds with one stone there. One, if you are actively engaged in a Reddit community, that can be your Community Hub. You can own the hub for your business. ClickUp does an amazing job with their Reddit community if you want a good B2B example that you can go look at. And then also, it also answers questions for LLMs. So multiple birds, one stone. I also advocate for a lot of event marketing. I think in this world of digital, everything is changing, but events still stay the same. And I think AI is moving people into wanting real connections with other human beings that they can be assured have no AI filter or overview. So I believe in events. I also believe in content serialization, weekly digest, resource kits. Again, reducing the dependency on external search is the objective of owning your audience. One last point here on Reddit, even if you are really skeptical about Reddit, I still recommend that every B2B company go out and get your subreddit, right? The name of your company subreddit, if it is available, the category that you are in, especially in technology, and go get your handle. It's kind of like back in the Twitter days, right? Where you just get your handle even if you don't think you're going to be on Twitter so that nobody else takes it on you. Okay, the next thing that is on the I don't care how much of this you choose to believe or execute on, but this one you got to do too, is reverse engineer for AI. So imagine a world where users go into ChatGPT and ask something broad. What technology is right for my business, right? So don't just start with your category here, like what's the best marketing automation platform? Although that is the way that some people are using ChatGPT, I think it's far more likely that people are asking very broad questions. And the other reason that you want to do this is because you want to understand what data points does the LLM take into account from the history, from the context of the relationship that this robot has built with your potential buyer. That becomes incredibly important. I'll give you an example. We work with a customer right now who sells supplies in bulk to people. So if you need 1,000 cans or 1,000 jars of something, you would buy from this customer. And one of the things that we learned very early on by just reverse engineering what was happening on LLMs is that location gave vastly different answers. So my answers in Phoenix, Arizona were completely different than another employee that we have in Michigan. Were completely different than another employee that we have in Florida. Were completely different than somebody that we had in California. So the location became really, really critical for us to tackle head on with this customer so that the LLMs would understand that whether you were in Pittsburgh or Phoenix or Chicago, they can service you. And just that simple edit alone was a huge game changer for them. They saw their traffic increase immediately by creating these pages. Now, just like in SEO, you can't just create the exact same page, clone it over and just be like, okay, Wisconsin, okay, Illinois. What we did for them was we talked about the customers that they had in the region, in the area, put a case study in there about why they service Illinois better than anyone, why they service Chicagoland better than anyone. And so that is putting the effort in is still super important. You can't just be lazy. I know a lot of people like to use AI to basically be lazy and just copy and paste whatever they say. You do need to still use your brain and put in the work. But it really can be a very, very valuable exercise to reverse engineer how these LLMs think about the context that's important when answering questions, even when the user doesn't ever bring it up. The third bullet point here is the other thing that I harp on with all of my clients, which is people will ask about money. Classically, SaaS companies do not like to put especially their enterprise pricing on their website. So the question that you are forced to answer because of the way that people are using LLMs is, what will an LLM do when someone asks about pricing? First, they'll go to your website and try to get pricing. But if they can't find it, what do they do next? They're going to go to Reddit, they're going to go to forums, they're going to go to G2, they're going to go try to find this information wherever they can. And if they can't find it, what are they going to do? They're going to hallucinate. They're going to make something up. And more critically terrible, they are going to make up what they think the user wants to hear. So you have a big question here to ask, which is, do we want to control this narrative? Do we want to put forth what our pricing is, or do we want to risk that an LLM is going to make it up and critically cost us business without us even knowing? All right, if you're properly scared. Now, let's just reiterate that we must proactively answer questions with our content. One of the things that I believe the most heavily in is video, and we haven't talked about it yet, so let's talk about it. So for niche terms, ChatGPT will include video. Google is piloting YouTube video carousels directly inside AI overviews. I have seen this a lot in a lot of the stuff that I search. Bing's Copilot is also testing it. And then just in terms of Gen Z in particular, they prefer TikTok over Google for general information searches. And I think the last thing here, especially for B2B companies, but even a lot of B2C companies, there's a first mover's advantage that is possible with content right now. Very, very, very few people do this well. Even if you do have one competitor that does it well, you probably don't have 4 or 5. And so there's a huge advantage that can be done with video. Again, as I said, I'm a B2B girly, and so I do talk to mostly B2B marketers. The B2B landscape looks like this. And by the way, this data, which is one of the few things that I haven't sourced, comes from the B2B Institute, which is a think tank that is sponsored by LinkedIn. So their data, and this is very fresh data, it came out this month. So the B2B market is a $20 trillion market versus the B2C market, which is $6 trillion. Average CMO tenure has for a long time been like reported as 18 months. There's been some adjustment to this, but they're reporting it's actually 4.5 years, which is pretty dope. Average buying group has ballooned to over 20 people. Again, this isn't every company, but this is the average buying group size. So there are a lot of humans that we have to influence, despite the fact that most of our buying cycles probably have 1 or 2 people that we're really talking to. We have to acknowledge that the group that is actually influencing that decision is actually much, much larger and mostly unknown. So we have to be thinking about, where are they going to get their information when they see someone's contract come across their desk. Peer video endorsements are 4 times more influential than company-made ones. I think we all see that, right? Company page posts tend to get a dismal reaction versus people's individual posts. And this I thought was very interesting. 82% of B2B buyers say that creator content influenced them in some way. And so what's working in B2B video, all of these percentages are increases that, again, the B2B Institute from LinkedIn has reported. Human stories, people-led stories give a 65% increase in engagement. Engagement here, again, is the LinkedIn term for engagement. Reactions, comments, shares, all that stuff. Executive clout matters, right? I continue to see people struggle to get their executives involved in LinkedIn. I just don't think there's any excuse. They need to get involved. You get a bump just from having that C in front of their title. It's really important. Make it pop, aka pop culture references. You get a 41% increase. I think fundamentally, LinkedIn still is a social media site where people want to have fun and be a little social, even if they're talking about business. And memes is like a quick, cheap way to get engagement. Okay, the last thing I'm going to say about all this AI stuff is that all of this is very reminiscent of marketing automation in the early 2010s, the digital transformation of the web, of getting a website up and all of that era, right? Marketing is often on the forefront of all of these innovations because we are the closest to the buyers in a mass scenario. I would say that sales is closer on a day-to-day scenario and a one-to-one scenario, but marketing has all of the tools to communicate in a mass way and also consume all of the aggregate data that's coming at us for buyer behaviors and how they are changing. Therefore, I think marketing has a unique position to help the organization understand how AI is impacting, again, the way our buyers buy today and how we think they're going to buy tomorrow, and how we can get in front of them and influence that decision. And I think this is a call to arms for marketers to not just be thinking about this internally, but we have to educate the organization as a whole, up, down, and across disciplines, job titles, levels of all sorts. We have to be championing what this means for us as a business, the macro impacts that come with this, both headwinds and tailwinds for our business. If you felt like you're just a promotion machine, I think this is how marketing gets back into a strategic leadership role within an organization and really secures our seat at the table to talk about how we drive the business forward through marketing, positioning, pricing, all of these things. You have a great excuse with this GEO stuff to really lead that conversation and become, through that, a leader in the whole organization. And of course, G&W, we'd love to help. We have lots of services around GEO in particular. We will help you do all of the things that I've already talked about. Prioritize, we'll help you write content. I can help you with your video strategy. We'll create videos together. It'll be a lot of fun. If you do want to reach out, here's how you find us. And then I am most available on LinkedIn. Come on over, connect with me, say you watch this video, and my DMs are always open. So let me know, hit me up. Hopefully this was helpful, and feel free to share it with anybody. Screenshot some slides. I got no problem. Just give us credit. Okay. Bye. Good marketing luck. See ya.